You know, this event is called Give Peace a Chance, and it will be discussing 3 different areas where somebody will speak about Egypt, somebody will speak on Palestine, and on Iraq. And it's examining the different conflicts that are occurring, the differences that they each have, and also the role of citizens. We all know with the beginning of the Arab Spring in 2010, the power of the citizens to take role and the changes they are able to make. So we're going to discuss that a bit, and also the part of the UN, whether they have failed, what part they have played, what part they can't play. We will touch a bit on that. Since we are already a little bit late, I will go ahead and introduce our first speaker, which is Ms. Tomadar Gohar. She has a Master's in Development Studies with over 20 years of experience in the international field. About 15 of those were in an unprecedented United Nations post-war reparations program described by the Security Council as a fact-finding mission. In addition, she has experience in the field with refugees, prisoners of war, and technical cooperation programs, and is currently the president of Citizens for Peace Building. And she will be discussing the case of Egypt for us. So thank you, and you have the floor.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be with you today to speak about our concept of peace based on the Egyptian revolution that started in January 2001 and still ongoing. I'm sure you all heard about it, and maybe you will follow me closely how the events were unfolding over the past 2.5 years. To put it short, it is the struggle of the Egyptians for a better Egypt at the social level and a strong Egypt at the international level. At the social level, the population was seeking its rights to food, liberty, social justice, and human dignity. If you meditate on these 4 demands, you will find that they comprise all the requirements for a peaceful living in any harmonious society. They equally sum up all the work of the giant UN apparatus on the interdependency of development, human rights, and peace. On the international level, the Egyptians felt that the impact of international Egypt was dwindling and shadowed by its dependence on certain countries, and hence the dependence of its decision. The Egyptian revolution so far consisted of 2 waves, and I say here so far because we don't know what will happen afterwards. A first wave started in January 2011 and ended by the deposition of President Mubarak on 11 February 2011, and the second wave gathered momentum in March 2013 through the Tamarod Action Rebel and ended by deposing of President Morsi on the 3rd of July 2013. During these 2.5 years, the role of the citizen was prominent and relentless, with massive collective gatherings of millions of people taking place between the 25th of January to 11th of February 2011, on the 6th and 7th of December 2012, and finally from June 30th to 3rd of July 2013, and on 26th of July 2013. In between these days, the streets were never quiet. There were always gatherings, marches, and sit-ins that varied in numbers of participants. It goes without saying, the citizen is the main actor. Yet, what interests us here is to reflect the awareness of the Egyptian citizen and how it was reflected in this revolution. The revolutionaries were pacifists since day one. They never took up arms, even when they were subjected to violent attacks or armed violence, whether under Mubarak, the SCAF rule, or Morsi. They never requested assistance or interference from the outside to achieve their cause. On the contrary, they were quite vehement in fighting this concept when the Brotherhood lately requested it under pretext to restore legitimacy. They were very vigilant to any call or action that may break the unity between Muslims and Christians. They reunited with their police forces after the latter underwent internal revision of their ethos and declared that their mission was not to protect a regime, but rather protect the people. They united with and took refuge in their army in the fight against internal violence and outside terror. This was manifested in the slogans raised since 28th of January 2011, "The army and the people are one hand." They did not depend on the politicians to help solve the complications of the transition period, as politicians proved to lack vision and were unable to provide real change to situations on the ground. Rather, they united behind a campaign run by the youth called Tamarrud or Rebel to withdraw the trust from Mr. Morsi. The Egyptians believed in a democratic transition, and in order to continue the democratic process, they had to fight many issues through the legal system and preferred to take a long process to reach their aim rather than revert to any other illegal action that may cause a setback from the aims of the revolution. Each Egyptian took part in this revolution as part of the collective conscience. Besides this, whole sectors of the society reacted firmly and took stand against the abuses and violations committed against the people's rights, whether these violations were in the form of decrees issued or laws passed illegally, or being the physical attacks on demonstrators. I would like here to cite the stand of the judges, the journalists, and the artists. Also, the screen jumped. Also, the role of Egyptians of the diaspora was quite remarkable. When misconception around the second wave of the revolution arose, they reacted individually and collectively in their host countries to clarify the situation inside Egypt. In fact, they all acted as ambassadors to Egypt in their own capacity in a swift move to defend the revolution. So, to sum all these points, it was unity, peacefulness, awareness, and collective action that were the motor for this revolution. But can we claim victory? There are lots of challenges still facing this revolution, some internal, some external, and some international. Internally, since the deposition of Morsi, Egyptians are faced with numerous acts of violence, ranging from physical attacks, burning down and torching of houses, shops, churches, government buildings, police stations, as well as taking complete areas under siege by the Muslim Brotherhood militias or other Islamic groups. For example, Delga, Kerdasa, and Nahya. There were also car bombings attacks, like the attempt to kill the Minister of Interior Affairs. These attacks are being faced by the police, while the army is fighting another fight in Sinai, that of the terrorist groups. These groups are not only Egyptians. They are formed from militia warriors who were fighting in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Chechen. These groups were permitted access to the country by Mr. Morsi, while others were released from Egyptian prisons and given amnesty by Morsi. Externally, there is a real threat coming from neighboring countries that provide those terrorist groups with munitions and money, while working also as their proxies with the outside world. Internationally, when the second wave of the revolution gathered in the streets, the international media covered objectively the scene, stating that such gathering never happened in the history of mankind, neither in recent or ancient history. Immediately after, when Western countries started to voice their position, the media changed its optic and started using its machine against the second wave of the revolution. Moreover, some countries called for the Security Council to meet on Egypt. We saw the European Union trying to issue a collective position on Egypt, and even the African Union was active on the scene. Now, talking of peace, there is a need to think out of the box. In the study groups on peace building with communities, we hear that the most successful examples are derived from the communities themselves. I would like here to apply the same to countries. In 1984, the world's threat for peace was different from now due to the Cold War. Hence, the General Assembly Declaration on the Right of Peoples to Peace was about the elimination of the threat of war, particularly nuclear war. Nowadays, 95% of the current conflicts in the world are in-state fightings, and therefore a new vision on the threat for world peace is needed, and equally new solutions. In this light, I believe any new declaration on peace or right to peace needs to underline the state's responsibility in conserving the peaceful existence of its citizens against any act of internal terror. Since January 2011, Egypt has experienced attack on its peace and security as stipulated in Chapter 1, Article 1 of the Charter of the United Nations. Its internal peace was breached through the infiltration of armed mercenaries to destabilize the society and to keep the population under control through the use of internal violence. Egypt's security was also breached by infiltration from across its borders by agents who planned terrorist attacks within its borders. Egypt is currently fighting terrorists on its soil while defending its borders from any further infiltrations. The Egyptian government is also exercising its obligation to prevent and its right to protect within its own territory through preventing attacks on unarmed civilians as well as preventing any eventual international aggression. The world would be a safer place if a state applies these two concepts within its borders before they are used as pretext by the international community as a means of intervention against a state's sovereignty. In this context, I need to underline here that due to a failure to understand the nature of the second wave of the revolution, there were verbal threats from countries. These threats created fear and defiance at the citizens' level from any kind of outside involvement or intervention. The second wave of the revolution perplexed many Western countries, yet at the same time, Egyptians failed to understand the position of the West towards them. When the first wave of the revolution started in January 2011, it quickly got its support from the West that gave it the name the Arab Spring. But when the second wave of the revolution came on 30th June 2013, with exactly almost the same circumstances as the first one, but with greater dimension, the world started to panic. They could not fit a name to what was happening. Is it a military coup? Is it a people's uprising? Is it a revolution? Maybe a corrective measure? Is it against legitimacy? This created a moment of instability to determine how to classify what happened. Yet the people concerned called it the second wave of people's revolution. Now, the way forward. The only way to ensure the realization of the aims of the revolution and the peacefulness exercised so far, despite of course some casualties, is to ensure a fast and efficient transition and to work to implement the demands of the revolution by enshrining them in the Constitution and the ensuing laws that guarantee the implementation of these rights. Besides, there must be democratic means for transfer of power, anti-corruption laws, transparency, and equal rights to all citizens, notwithstanding the religion, ethnicity, or belief. Also, there must be ways for citizens to really share in governing their country by creating appropriate channels to voice their concerns. If the international community would like to find a role in this important transition in the region, this can be through providing technical assistance as required. It is equally important for the world's peace to respect the specificities and culture of each country. It is not becoming to create a box and try to fit an action in that box to fit one's own definition. The Declaration of Human Rights is universal, but its application is specific. And this is where the role of technical cooperation meets the aspiration of the peoples. It is important to respect people's choices and assist them in realizing these choices, and to draw a line between one's own interest in the region and respecting the people's right. Thank you very much.